Pei farewell to Cui Xingzong. Going into the mountains, whether deep or not, you should enjoy the beauty of hills and valleys. But don't be like that man from Wu Ling, who only stayed a while at Peach Blossom Spring. Okay, so we continue with other poets in the 5-word quatrain section. This poem is the only one in the collection by Pei Di, and it is very appropriately located just after Wang Wei's poems. So let's make a very quick summary of Pei Di's life. He's not a very, very famous first-rate poet, we would say. He was a Haitang writer, a contemporary, and a close friend of Wang Wei. In fact, he spent some time with him and other friends at Nanshan, Wang Wei's estate in the outskirts of the capital. And he exchanged poems with Wang Wei, and he later would be the co-author of the famous Wang River Valley collection, of which we've talked before. We've even read a couple of poems by Wang Wei from this collection, from another of Wang Wei's estates. In the collection, you basically have a series of poems on landmarks of those at that estate. And for every landmark, you have 2 poems by Wang Wei and 2 poems by Pei Di. So this is his main claim to glory. He would serve he had a moderately successful career in the administration. In the 760s, he served under Wang Wei's younger brother, Wang Jing, who was prefect of Suzhou. And there he got into contact with other important Haitang writers, like Li Qi or Du Fu. But as we say, his production, I think, is not particularly famous, except for the Wang River poems in connection with Wang Wei. So, having taken a look at this general background of this figure, let's go a little bit into this poem. Let's start with the title, Farewell to Cui Xingzong. So from the title, we know that this is going to be thematically a parting poem. Who is Cui Xingzong? Well, I've made a little bit of research. It seems that this Cui Xingzong was a relative of Wang Wei's as well. I think he was a brother-in-law. And not much have I found about him, but presumably this poem was composed on the occasion of this Cui Xingzong quitting office. Now, remember, this is a topic that is very dear to Tang poets. Abandoning office, especially the retired life, connected with the hermit life, the abandonment of the world, and the leading of a religiously inclined retirement life, in which one, whether for Buddhist or Taoist reasons, or even Confucian reasons, one wishes to get rid of the dust of the world and renounce its ambition. So this poem falls quite squarely into this category, and you could say, therefore, that the main topic is abandoning the world and adopting a recluse lifestyle, even though this probably was, I don't know if Cui Xingzong was really abandoning office for living a retired life. But anyway, it's the conventional topic. So, living the retired life, abandoning office, and it's the topic. I wouldn't say there are any other topics in this poem. There are historical references, especially one that we will comment upon when we talk about the second couplet. More than historical, that's a literary reference. But that's the subject matter. And as usual with these very short quatrains, you could divide the poem into 2. The first couplet on the one hand, the second couplet on the other hand. And the third line, the beginning of the second couplet, brings on a slight change of focus or topic, which is generally something very positively appreciated by critics in Jueju, in these short quatrains. So let's start with the first couplet. Going into the mountains, whether deep or not, you should enjoy the beauty of hills and valleys. The whole poem is built on 2 pieces of advice. So we have Pei Di's poetic persona and his poetic voice directing itself to Cui Xingzong, and it gives him 2 pieces of advice. The first couplet is the first one, do this. The second couplet is going to be the second one, and it's don't do that. So what does the poet tell Cui Xingzong to do? He says, going into the mountains, whether deep or not, enjoy the beauty of hills and valleys. So the mountains. Remember, the mountains are sites of retirement. The Tang aristocracy and the scholar officials who are wealthy enough had estates and country retreats. Even if they didn't have one, they usually visited friends or literarily inclined monks and hermits who lived pretty close to the capital. Nanshan, the southern range, just to the south of Chang'an, was the home of many hermits. So it was a pretty conventional outing activity in their free time for scholar officials to go and play at the retired life, whether it be for some weeks or months in their estates or just visiting another hermit. So here we have that sort of scene. Pei Di is like saying goodbye to Sui Song. You're going to the mountains. Maybe this is figurative. Maybe, as I said, Sui Song is not going really into a mountain retreat, but his quitting office is metaphorically going into the mountains. And whether deep or not, this deepness, might be literal, where deep in the mountains, or not so deep, or it might be figurative, like deep, you really are going to retire from the world, or maybe not. Maybe it's just an abandoning of court and office, but you will still be at the capital or maintain typical social relations. It says, whatever you do, you should enjoy the beauty of hills and valleys. Enjoy the beauty of nature. Now, this would seem like a slightly frivolous element of, retiring to the mountains, enjoy beauty. But remember, the beauty of the mountains is always embedded in a more religious and metaphysical point of view, like in connect with nature, with the flows of what is real and genuine, with what is not conventional, socially created and perhaps hypocritical, false, controlled by greed and ambition. So first recommendation, go out to the mountains, whether you're going to real mountains or figurative ones, but enjoy the retired life. Enjoy the simple pleasures. Move away from court and ambition. So this is a do. The second couplet, is a don't. And it's a don't that relates to a historical and literary image that we've already encountered before. The Peach Blossom Spring story by Six Dynasties writer and poet Tao Yuanming. But don't be like that man from Wulin, who only stayed a while at Peach Blossom Spring. So just don't be like that man, the fisherman from Wulin, who visited the Peach Blossom Spring and abandoned it and then could never return there again. We've already talked about this story in a previous poem that was more directly an explanation or a paraphrase of the Peach Blossom Spring narration that was written by Tao Qian. So in case you don't remember it, so this is a short fictional story of this fisherman who, following a stream that is littered with peach blossoms, encounters a cave and goes in, and he finds what could be described as a peasant utopia. There's a community that has lived ensconced into a secret hidden vale, and they have lived there since the time of the Qin dynasty, which for the person who wrote this story, which was, as I said, Tao Qian, would have been more than 500 years back in time. And it's an ideal peasant community which is prosperous, doesn't have to pay taxes, and doesn't have to suffer warfare and conflict. And, it's an ideal place. But the fisherman, after enjoying and being welcomed in that area, goes away. Not only does he go away, but rather treacherously, he informs the authorities, and they try to find the veil, but they cannot. They fail. It's a lovely short fictional story. And as I mentioned, I think, when I talked about the poem that paraphrases this text, I suspect that it might have been an inspiration for Cuban writer Alejo Carpentier's novel Los Pasos Perdidos, which deals with similar scenario but transplanted into the Amazon and Latin America. Anyway, the advice, don't be like this fool who got to earthly paradise, you could say, and left it. Be wise. Now that you've left office, don't be seduced by its calls or its allures. Don't go back. Enjoy the retired life. Enjoy the life out of office, as probably Pei Di did for the most time. Again, there is a certain level of, you could say, hypocrisy in these poems, because we do know that Pady was a moderately successful civil servant. So there's always this antithetic speech in these scholar officials about being in office, not being in office, abandoning the world, but also following one's Confucian duty of improving the world. But anyway, it's a representative piece of its genre. I think it's pretty okay, pretty interesting for being Pady's only contribution in this collection.